Just experienced a 6.5 earthquake in Mexico City, and I just realized I'm more prepared than most people because I grew up in a doomsday cult. Let's talk about it. My name is Serena Kelly. I grew up in the Children of God cult as a child celebrity. My child celebrity name was Mary Dear. Now, the Children of God cult, aka the Family International, was a doomsday cult, which meant Jesus was coming back at any moment and the Antichrist soldiers were going to come running, like Book of Revelation style. So we grew up having flea bags, which meant bags that we could flee in, for Antichrist soldiers. And this had all of the essentials. There was actually a little kid's comic book called Survival Sam, and it taught us all of these survival methods, like what to use for natural remedies, for emergencies, what to pack in your flea bag. And in conversations with other people, the things that I packed in my flea bag were just like common sense to me. And most people had no idea like what to pack in their flea bag. So this is just a perfect example that yes, of course, the cult was terrible, but when you are healed, you don't have to look at everything so negatively and be like, oh, everything's bad. You just have like a bad reaction to everything. There were good things growing up in the Children of God cult. And I was prepared for an emergency and disaster my whole life. And we actually had to use those flea bags in El Salvador. There was a 6.8 earthquake back in 2001 when I lived in Guatemala, and I went to El Salvador to volunteer with the Red Cross to help with disaster because hundreds of people died, and we had to run outside because there were tremors every night, and I already had my flea bag packed. And this just had basic essentials like first aid kit, boots, like you always pack boots. I always have my hiking boots in my backpack because if you're in rubble, walking around in tennis shoes is not ideal. You need hiking boots. A life straw so you can drink water because in disasters, water sources are usually contaminated and it's hard to find. So you get a life straw, a flashlight, your documents, a battery charger. You need a sweater, you need pants, you need clothes, underwear, a flashlight, like some of these things that you don't think to pack in your bag that you really need in your everyday life. So this experience was a perfect example of taking the good and leaving the bad because I realized I'm way more prepared than other people. I have knives in my bag. I've got pens, permanent marker, because you need to mark sometimes things on your body, your clothes, if you lose your identification. I also have identification. There's a whole there's a whole bunch of stuff that is in my bag that I was sharing with other people and they didn't even think to have those in. So yes, this is a great example of turning a negative experience into a positive one because in Mexico City, there are earthquakes all the time. You have to run out of your house and you've got 30 seconds. This was a 6.5. My whole building was shaking. Some friends of mine, and this is because there's some disasters, it doesn't mean the building will fall down. Some friends of mine were stuck outside of their building because they had to wait for inspection for structural damage. So if you had that bag with you, you could just pop over to a friend's house with your bag and you'd be prepared for multiple days. So it's really important that you take care of yourself and you are prepared for the local and natural disasters in your local area. So pack your flea bag if you're in a flood zone, if you're in an earthquake zone, if you're in a tornado zone, fire zone. We experience fires and floods all the time in Brazil. So those flea bags were not just used in preparation for the Antichrist soldiers, which plot twist, they never came. Oh. But we had fires on our mountains. There were many times when we had to leave our house. Thankfully, the house was okay, but we were thinking like we might have to actually leave. So just a great reminder, take the good, leave the bag. It will serve you someday like it did for me today.